My girlfriend sneered. You? Since when you care about my Snapchat score? After it jumped by 15,000 in a week. I said, since now. What she didn't expect was her mom calling to ask why I'd sent her the screenshots. Sometimes the revenge is just telling the truth. 29M, never thought I'd be the guy checking Snapchat scores. Hell, I barely understood what they meant until last Tuesday when my entire world shifted on its axis. My girlfriend and I had been together for 3 years. We met during a mutual friend's birthday party where she spilled an entire glass of red wine on my white shirt and spent the next hour apologizing while dabbing at the stain with napkins. That clumsiness, that genuine embarrassment in her eyes, made me fall for her instantly. We moved in together after 18 months, split rent on a modest 2-bedroom apartment downtown, and talked vaguely about engagement rings and future plans. Everything felt normal until it wasn't. The first sign came on a random weeknight. I was scrolling through my phone while she showered, and her Snapchat notification lit up my screen. We had that kind of relationship where phones weren't locked fortresses. Her passcode was my birthday. Mine was hers. Trust, right? The score caught my eye. Not because I was looking for it, but because it seemed impossibly high compared to what I remembered. She wasn't a heavy social media user. Instagram maybe, but Snapchat had always been her least used app. I could count on one hand the number of times I'd seen her actually take snaps. I opened my own Snapchat and checked her profile. The number glowed back at me. 847,392. Something nagged at my memory. I was certain, absolutely certain, that just last week her score had been around 832,000. I remembered because we'd joked about her being so close to a milestone number. 15,000 points in a week. For someone who barely used the app. I sat there, shower water running in the background, trying to rationalize it. Maybe she'd been sending snaps to her friends. Maybe there was a group chat I didn't know about. Maybe she was finally getting into social media more. People changed their habits. It wasn't a crime, but something felt off. That night, I said nothing. We ate leftover Thai food, watched 2 episodes of a cooking show we'd been binge-watching, and went to bed. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing evening out into soft snores. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling ridiculous for letting a stupid number bother me. The next morning, I checked again. 847,392, same number. Relief washed over me. See? Nothing was happening. I was being paranoid. By Friday, it had jumped to 854,210. Another 7,000 in 3 days. I started keeping track. Not in some elaborate spreadsheet or anything that organized, just mental notes throughout the week. Monday, 854,210. Wednesday, 859,847. Friday, 863,192. The pattern was undeniable. Thousands of points accumulating daily. Each point represented a snap sent or received. The math was simple and damning. I tried bringing it up casually. We were having coffee on Saturday morning, and I asked her if she'd been using Snapchat more lately. She glanced up from her phone with a confused expression and said she hadn't touched it in weeks. The lies sat between us like a third person at the table. I nodded, sipped my coffee, and said nothing more. That's when I started really paying attention, not just to the score, but to her. The way she angled her phone away when notifications came in. How she'd excuse herself to the bathroom with her phone clutched in her hand. The slight smile that played on her lips when she typed messages, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Tuesday night, everything came to a head. We were watching a movie, and her phone kept buzzing. Over and over. She'd glance at it, smile, and type back quickly. The 4th time it happened, I finally asked who she was texting. She said it was just her friend from work complaining about their boss. I pointed out that she seemed to be texting them a lot lately. She paused the movie and turned to face me with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold. Calculating. She asked me why I was suddenly so interested in her phone activity. Was I tracking her or something? I told her I wasn't tracking anything, but I had noticed her Snapchat score had increased by 15,000 points in the past week. The reaction was immediate and visceral. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. Her face twisted into something between disgust and anger. She actually sneered at me, her lip curling up as she spat out the words asking since when I cared about her Snapchat score. Like I was some pathetic loser for even noticing. Like basic observation was stalking. I kept my voice level and told her since now. Since the numbers stopped making sense with her behavior. Since she started lying to my face about using an app she was clearly glued to, she exploded. Accusations flew like shrapnel. I was controlling. I was insecure. I was suffocating her. How dare I monitor her social media? What was next? Demanding access to all her accounts. She grabbed her keys and stormed out, saying she needed space from my paranoid accusations. I sat in the silence of our apartment for maybe 10 minutes before something clicked. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. We both used the same laptop sometimes for streaming or work. And she'd been logged into Snapchat on the web browser. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I also can't say I regret it. I opened the laptop and went to her Snapchat. The web version didn't show full conversations, but it showed enough. Recent snaps sent and received. Thumbnails. Names. One name dominated the recent activity. A guy's name I didn't recognize. Hundreds of snaps back and forth. The thumbnails were mostly selfies. Her face at different angles, different lighting. Some showed more than just her face. My hand shook as I scrolled through. Each thumbnail was a punch to the gut. There were snaps from our bed, from our bathroom, from the kitchen where we ate breakfast together every morning. She'd been documenting our life and sending it to someone else, creating an intimate parallel relationship right under my nose. I grabbed my phone and started taking screenshots. Every conversation I could access. Every thumbnail. Every timestamp. I captured it all methodically, my emotions locked away in some compartment I'd deal with later. Right now I needed evidence. Proof that I wasn't crazy or controlling or paranoid. The really damning stuff was in the messages that weren't automatically deleted. He was planning to visit our city next month. She'd been looking at hotel rooms, making plans. There were references to previous meetups I'd never known about. Weekends she'd claimed to be visiting her sister or out with friends. The timeline reconstructed itself in my mind like a crime scene investigation. The girls' weekend 3 months ago. The work conference that ran late. The sister's birthday party I couldn't attend because of work. Every absence now carried a shadow of doubt. I was still sitting there, phone full of screenshots, laptop still open, when she came back 2 hours later. She walked in quietly, her earlier anger seemingly deflated. She sat down next to me and said she was sorry for overreacting. She'd been stressed with work and took it out on me. She wasn't cheating or anything. The Snapchat thing was just her reconnecting with old friends. Could we please just drop it? I looked at her and saw a stranger. This woman I'd planned a future with, who I'd trusted completely, was sitting here weaving more lies while evidence of her betrayal sat in my pocket. I told her I needed some air and left before she could respond. I drove to a coffee shop and sat in my car for an hour, trying to figure out what to do. Confrontation felt pointless. She'd just lie more, gaslight me, turn it around somehow. Breaking up felt too simple, too easy for her. She'd walk away thinking she'd gotten away with something, that I was just the paranoid boyfriend who couldn't handle her having friends. That's when I thought about her mother. Her mom and I had always gotten along well. She was a practical, no-nonsense woman who'd raised 3 daughters as a single mother after her husband left when the kids were young. She told me once, during a family barbecue, that she appreciated how I treated her daughter with respect and honesty. She said those were the foundations of any real relationship. Honesty. The word echoed in my head. I opened my messages and started a new conversation with her mother. I kept it simple. Told her I needed to share something important about her daughter. Said I had some information she deserved to see. Then I attached the screenshots. Every single one. The snaps, the messages, the hotel searches, the timeline of lies. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I drove home, walked into our apartment, and told my girlfriend we were done. She tried to argue, tried to flip it back on me for snooping, tried to minimize what she'd done. I didn't engage. I just started packing my essentials into a duffel bag. I've been paying 3/4 of the rent anyway. So I told her she had until the end of the month to figure out her living situation because I was taking my name off the lease. She was still trying to talk to me when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and I watched the color drain from her face. She looked at me with something like panic and asked what I'd done. I told her the truth. Sometimes revenge isn't about elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's just about making sure the right people know who someone really is. She answered the phone and immediately started crying. Her mother's voice was loud enough that I could hear it from across the room, sharp and disappointed. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes. When it ended, my girlfriend looked at me with pure hatred. She said I'd ruined her life. I turned her family against her. I was vindictive and cruel. I told her I'd simply share the truth. If the truth ruined her life, maybe she should have considered that before building everything on lies. I left that night, crashed on my buddy's couch while I figured out next steps. The text started coming around midnight. First from her, begging me to fix what I'd done, to tell her mother it was a misunderstanding. Then from her sister, asking what the hell was going on. Then from her mother, thanking me for being honest with her and apologizing that her daughter had put me through this. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since everything exploded, and the aftermath has been more complicated than I expected. I'm writing this from my new studio apartment, nothing fancy, but it's mine and mine alone. The lease on our old place ends in 10 days, and from what I've heard through mutual friends, she's scrambling to find a roommate or move back home. I'm trying not to care, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel some grim satisfaction. Her mother called me 3 days after I sent those screenshots. I almost didn't answer, worried that she'd change her mind and would tear into me for exposing her daughter. Instead, she asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity and partly because she'd always been kind to me. We met at a small cafe near her house. She looked tired, older somehow than the last time I'd seen her at Thanksgiving. She thanked me for coming and then apologized, not for her daughter, but for not seeing the signs herself. She told me that my girlfriend had been caught cheating before in her last serious relationship, though I'd never known that. Her mother had hoped she'd grown past that behavior, that maturity and a stable relationship would have changed her patterns. I sat there processing this information, realizing I'd never really been given the full picture of who I was dating. Her mother explained that she'd confronted her daughter with the evidence, and instead of showing remorse, she tried to blame me. Said I was controlling and jealous, that she'd been planning to break up with me anyway, that the guy in the screenshots was just a friend, and I'd misinterpreted innocent conversations. Her mother didn't buy it. She'd seen the hotel searches, the timestamps, the context of the messages. She told her daughter that if she couldn't be honest even when confronted with proof, then she had some serious growing up to do. Apparently, her 2 sisters had similar reactions. The family group chat had become a war zone, with my ex on one side trying to spin the narrative and everyone else refusing to let her rewrite history. The most surprising thing her mother told me was that she'd reached out to the guy in the screenshots, found him on social media, and sent him a message explaining who she was and asking if he knew her daughter had a live-in boyfriend. He hadn't known. According to what he told her, my girlfriend had claimed to be single, living with a roommate who was barely around. He'd been planning that trip to our city, thinking he was going to meet someone available and honest. He'd ended things immediately after learning the truth. Apparently sent my ex a pretty scathing message about wasting his time and being a liar. So she'd lost both of us in the span of a week. Her mother asked me how I was doing. Really doing, not just the surface-level fine that people default to. I told her the truth. I was angry, hurt, relieved, confused about how I'd missed the signs, worried I'd never trust anyone again. She listened without interrupting, then told me something that stuck with me. She said that sometimes people show us exactly who they are, but we're so invested in who we want them to be that we ignore the evidence. She said her daughter had problems with honesty that went deeper than just infidelity, that she'd been enabling it for years by making excuses, and that maybe losing me was the wake-up call she needed. Maybe it wouldn't be. But either way, I deserved better than someone who could look me in the eye and lie so easily. We finished our coffee and parted ways. She hugged me and told me to take care of myself. I appreciated it more than I could express. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, picked up extra hours, anything to keep my mind occupied. My coworkers noticed I was quieter but didn't push. A few close ones knew what had happened and would occasionally check in, making sure I was eating properly and not completely isolating myself. The mutual friend situation has been awkward. Our social circle was pretty intertwined, and I've noticed the distinct split. Some people reached out to me, expressing support and sharing that they'd never fully trusted her. Others went radio silent, either not wanting to choose sides or having chosen hers. One former friend sent me a message saying I was wrong for sending those screenshots to her mother, that it was a private matter between us, and I'd crossed a line. I blocked that number without responding. Update 2. A month has passed since I moved out, and I'm starting to feel like myself again. The raw hurt has dulled into something more manageable, like a bruise that's fading. I've been going to the gym regularly, picked up some hobbies I'd neglected during the relationship, and even went on a date last week. Nothing serious, just coffee with someone I met through a work event, but it felt good to have a conversation without carrying the weight of betrayal. My ex tried to reach out twice. The first time was through a long email that showed up in my inbox at 2 in the morning. It was a rambling mess of half apologies mixed with justifications. She claimed she'd been unhappy for months, but didn't know how to tell me. That she'd felt suffocated by my expectations. That what happened with the other guy was just her trying to feel desired again. She ended it by saying she hoped we could eventually be friends, that what we had was too special to throw away completely. I deleted it without responding. The second attempt came through a mutual friend who called me saying she was worried about her. Apparently, my ex had been having a rough time. Lost friends. Family relationships were strained. She was struggling with the lease situation and work stress. The friend asked if I could maybe talk to her, just to give her some closure. I told the friend that closure was something you give yourself, not something you demand from people you've hurt. I wasn't responsible for managing her emotions or helping her process consequences that she'd brought on herself. The friend got quiet and then said she understood. We haven't spoken since. The most unexpected development came from the guy she'd been snapping. He found me on social media and sent a message apologizing for his unwitting role in the situation. He seemed genuinely remorseful, explaining that he'd been completely blindsided by the revelation. He thought he was building something real with someone honest. Instead, he'd been a supporting actor in someone else's deception. We ended up talking on the phone for over an hour, comparing timelines, filling in gaps in our respective stories. He shared screenshots of conversations where she'd complained about her annoying roommate who was always around. The roommate was me, her boyfriend of 3 years. He was horrified. I was surprisingly calm about it, the anger having mostly burned itself out by then. We commiserated about being fooled by the same person, and by the end of the conversation, he said something that resonated. He said that people like her don't change until they're forced to see themselves clearly, without filters or excuses. That maybe being exposed to everyone who mattered was exactly what she needed, even if it felt cruel from the outside. Her sister reached out to me last week, the younger one who I'd always gotten along with. She apologized for what her sister had done and told me she tried to convince her to come clean before everything exploded. Apparently, she'd noticed changes in her behavior months ago, had even confronted her about potentially cheating, but had been shut down and called paranoid. She shared that the family intervention had been brutal. Their mother had laid out everything, and when my ex tried to spin it, her sisters had backed their mother up. They'd told her that losing me was entirely her fault, that destroying trust with lies was a choice she made repeatedly, and that facing consequences didn't make her a victim. My ex had apparently broken down, finally admitting to the affair, but still trying to minimize it, saying it wasn't that serious, that they'd only met up twice in person, that most of it was just online flirting that got out of hand. Her family didn't accept the minimization. They told her that cheating was cheating, that lying was lying, and that she needed to take real accountability instead of parsing degrees of betrayal. The sister told me all this and then said something I hadn't expected. She said she was proud of me for having the self-respect to walk away and for being honest with her mother. That too many people stay in situations like mine, trying to make it work with someone who doesn't respect them. That I deserve someone who wouldn't make me question my sanity or reality. I thanked her and told her I hoped her sister eventually figured things out, even if that journey had nothing to do with me anymore. Last night, I was organizing my new place when I came across a box of photos from our relationship. Trips we'd taken, holidays with her family, random moments that had seemed significant at the time. I sat there looking through them, and instead of feeling sad or angry, I mostly felt nothing. They were pictures of a version of me who didn't know what I know now. A version who trusted too easily and overlooked too much. I didn't throw them away, but I didn't keep them on display either. I packed them back up and put them in the back of a closet. Maybe someday I'll look at them differently. Maybe I won't. Either way, they're part of my history now, not my present. The truth is, I don't regret sending those screenshots to her mother. Some people might call it petty or vindictive, but I call it honest. I didn't embellish anything, didn't add commentary or editorials. I simply showed someone who cared about both of us what had actually been happening. The fallout wasn't my responsibility. It was hers. Sometimes revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just refusing to protect someone from the consequences of their own choices. Sometimes it's just telling the truth and letting it do what truth does best. Reveal who people really are when the mask comes off. I'm rebuilding now, slowly, carefully, with better boundaries and clearer standards. The next person who wants to be part of my life will have to earn that trust, and I won't apologize for that. And if I ever see my Snapchat score jump by 15,000 points in a week, I'll at least know I'm using the app.